Okay, it looks like it's 1 o'clock. We'll get things started. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kaylee Gattens, and I have the honor of being a part of the Supercluster team as Director of Communications. And I would like to welcome you all to our Associates Onboarding Town Hall today. As a reminder, the call will be recorded, so if you could please mute your lines to avoid any feedback during the presentation, that would be great. To kick things off, as the majority of our Supercluster team is based in Vancouver, British Columbia, I would like to acknowledge that we are gathering virtually today on the traditional lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. To set the stage for our town hall, here is an overview of what we will be covering today. And before I hand things over to Bill Tam, our co-founder and Chief Operating Officer of the Digital Supercluster, our goal is to have this town hall be an engaging and informative session. So if at any point during the call you have a question, we ask that you please type them into the chat box. And as they come in, we will pause during each slide to periodically and have Bill address them. I will be cueing you in and reading each question aloud, calling your name and asking you to unmute yourself. So with that, over to you, Bill.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks again for joining. I'm sure you're all getting to be experts on using video conferencing, Zoom, and other tools to have these sorts of sessions. It is really unprecedented times, but it's also a great opportunity for us to have conversations with everyone across the country. And I know there's a number of associates that have joined us at the Supercluster who are from many different parts of Canada. So my hope is that today we can at least provide an introduction on some of these areas and also get you to engage in this community. I see some questions already that are queuing up about presentations and what to everybody, so you can have a record of that as well. So perhaps where I can start is just to talk a little bit about the origins of Supercluster. Maybe we can move to the next slide, please. So as Kaylee said, we want to make sure that we can kind of introduce you to the Supercluster, officially welcome all of you, and talk a little bit about who we are, what we do, and sorry, if we can go back one slide, Annika, please, and how to get engaged. So let's move to the next slide. So the Supercluster community is something that we've had the privilege of building up over the last 3 years. Although it's centered in British Columbia, our mandate is really to serve the communities across the country. And what we're super proud about is that there is a tremendous diversity in the organizations that are part of the Supercluster. We've got small and large companies. We have companies that are part of being industry leaders in various industry verticals. We have academic institutions, we have research organizations. Really, the Supercluster and all of the Superclusters across the country are about bringing the best and the brightest and expertise to together build collaborations that can solve some of the biggest problems and challenges by bringing that expertise together. And we have a set of core values, which I'll talk a little bit about in a moment, but the key here is to really harness that diversity and collaboration and really set the stage for us developing digital technologies that are not only going to be adopted in Canada, but have the potential to be world leading. Next slide, please. So the overview is, of course, many of you are aware that there's superclusters across the country, and we're one of 5. Our focus is on digital technology, but there are superclusters focused on agriculture and proteins in particular, advanced manufacturing, supply chain AI, and the Ocean Supercluster in Atlantic Canada. So in terms of what we do, there was a framework that we had set out, and you'll find this on our website as well, where there's to look at where there are already existing strengths. From the standpoint of technology, we looked at the strengths that I think are not only pervasive here on the West Coast, but I think across the country. We have data and digital capabilities that are in most of the regions, most of the startup communities and the tech ecosystem across the country. So the construct on the left describes sort of a 3 stacks of capabilities around data collection. That's all of the Internet of Things technologies, all of the the broadband infrastructure, and the capabilities for us to collect larger and larger volumes of information. The analytics side, so the second layer, I think there has been tremendous companies and technology that's been developed in Canada around how we go about enterprise and other sort of data and health data analytics. And finally, on the visualizations of new technology, virtual reality is around three-dimensional data. I'll turn off my video just there. Hopefully I'm coming through. Kaylee, can I do a sound check, please? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go.
Okay, thanks very much for that. So the initial verticals that we were focused on were in the healthcare area, industrial, that includes industrial manufacturing, transportation, infrastructure, and then natural resources. And we picked those ones because those are areas that I think Canada writ large, and particularly for the West Coast, are dominant industry sets. And we set about trying to build collaborations that can try to solve some of the issues and opportunities that are faced by industry leaders in each of those sectors. And on the right-hand side, you get a sense of how we designed our programs. And ultimately, we convened conversations with many different stakeholder groups and industry players to try to arrive at where would be the focus areas for our programs. I realize that now I'm probably echoing, so someone, yeah, that's better. Thank you for muting your system. So really there's 4 original programs we focused on: precision health, digital twins, data commons, and capacity building. I'll talk a little bit about each one of those. And most recently, as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, we created a new program specifically to respond to the needs of the COVID crisis, and also to set the framework for how we will go through economic recovery post-COVID as well. So I'll talk about those in a moment. Can we move to the next slide, please? So for many of you who are new to the Supercluster, the co-investment model, or how we design the collaborations, is probably the heart and soul of how things operate. It is quite different, I think, than most other models that you're no doubt familiar with, in that the nature of what we're trying to construct here has the duality of investment dollars that we'll put into projects, but also the existence of many different players that are part of your consortium. And some of the foundational pieces is that we're trying to construct these collaborations such that there's a customer, or what we call an industry partner, on the endpoint. They're the ones that are driving the opportunity, defining the need, understanding what the solution needs to entail, and then ultimately being a co-investor in the research and development effort, because the outcome is something that's going to help in their operations and kind of drive their own strategic agenda. At the same time, we have lead technology companies that build the products and platform capabilities. There are co-development partners that add expertise in areas that aren't already covered by that lead technology partner. There are also technology service providers and other partners that provide a lot environment that the industry partner is looking for. And one of the key partners in this equation is the post-secondary and research environment, because they bring the much needed expertise to go beyond the current state and to actually look at how more of what they've been developing and researching in the background can be brought to bear on a commercialization front. And our role in this is to invest dollars alongside with all these other partners and really leverage the investment and provide for a faster scaling of the outcomes. So that's sort of the broad template and model for that. And I'll for sure answer some questions as we go through that. Next slide, please. So for everyone who's new to the Supercluster, and I realize I've had some conversations with some of you who are on the call today, but you know, our model is to have an open environment for any organization that's Canadian to have the opportunity to join. part of joining is that we ask all of you, and I think most, if not all of you, have already done this, is to sign up as an associate and to sign our participation agreement. And that participation agreement basically confers the sort of our code of conduct, our core values, how we operate as part of that. And so in that environment, you're among a group of 500 organizations who all believe in the same thing, which is that you can create products and outcomes that on your own. Your associates and develop projects. We have a resource portal for those of you who haven't. For those of you who haven't already done so, you will to sign up and get a log into our resource portal. I'd invite you to share that with your colleagues in your organizations, because that'll give you an opportunity to discover the other members that are part of the supercluster or other associates, what their expertise areas might be, and ultimately to look at projects, ideas, and participate. So that's the next step, is developing projects and opportunities into our program areas. And then our our system works in such a way that successful projects and associates that are part of that have an opportunity then to upgrade to a full membership when you have a project. And the idea behind all to do.
Hi,
Okay.
Bill. This is Kaylee. I'm just wondering if you could just repeat the last 2 points on that slide. We're just breaking up a little bit on the line.
Yes, I apologize, folks. It seems that internet bandwidth is a commodity that we're all fighting for in downtown. So I'll just repeat that the goal here is to help associates like yourselves to develop and propose projects in each of the program areas. And when you do have a successful project, that's when we would invite you to upgrade to a full membership. And the whole model here is designed such that you find success in the project, and then you repeat and you continue to do this in a manner that continues to build upon your strategy for success. Hopefully that all kind of came through. Kaylee, can you just confirm?
Yes, that was clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Why don't we move to the next slide? As I mentioned earlier, when you go into the resource portal, you'll get a listing of all of the organizations that are part of the supercluster. There's now, I think the last count was close to 570 or so organizations that are part of it. A real diverse group, and so part of the execution of this to be successful is really to connect you with the other folks there through your own self-discovery on the resource portal, but also introductions that we're able to make on calls like this or other sort of forums as we bring different organizations together. Why don't we move to the next slide?
لذيذة April.
Pardon me? Was that a question? Okay.
عطت لي ايميل قالت لي انه انا ما عندي سايكلز اكتب السوشيال ميديا بس.
Oh, if we could just please remind everyone to mute their lines. Thank you.
ما يشارجوك باكثر من $1200 بالشهر والناس اللي بيكونوا كمان. بس قالت لي انا I'm happy to.
Annika, could you please try to mute all on your end if that's possible, and then we can continue on with the presentation?
Creating a social media, just creating original social media content every other day and managing pushing content.
Thanks, Bill. You can continue.
Okay, thank you much. I think I covered much of this earlier about how associates get involved, and I might just kind of skip ahead and make sure I can get to some of the questions that have queued up on the chat window. So maybe at this point, I'd like to do a couple things. I realize that we have folks that are on the call from across the country. And in addition to the questions that are being asked on the chat window, I'll ask Kaylee to kind of help me moderate. If there's anyone that would like to take this opportunity to introduce themselves or introduce their organization to the other people on the call, I think we've got probably about, it feels like about 50 or so people that are part of this conversation. I know I've spoken with a few of you already, so I want to thank you all that have joined us. But if anyone would like to make any sort of introduction about your organization or what your areas of expertise are, don't be shy, and feel free to kind of signal yourself on the chat window there. So while you're thinking about that, maybe I'll ask Kaylee, do we have any questions queued up?
Right now, no, Bill, but we do have two volunteers to introduce themselves. I'll ask Adrian Pape to unmute your line, and please go ahead.
Sure, thanks. I'm Adrian Pape. I'm the CFO at Pi Health. Pi is a technology we developed that's a prescription for exercise. So it's a way of taking the subjectivity out of that conversation when you say I was running really hard. We quantify the exercise based on your heart rate and then give a prescription. So if you keep your score above 100 on a 7-day rolling basis, then you'll do enough exercise to extend your life and reduce your risk of cardiovascular disease and other things. So it's just a tool for measuring exercise for people in a research or a medical setting.
Kaylee, why don't you continue to moderate? That would be great.
Absolutely. That was great. Thank you so much, Adrian. Next, I'll ask Rita Park. Pardon me. Sorry if I didn't pronounce that correctly. Hi, Rita.
That's okay. It's Rita Parikh.
Parikh, thank you.
Yeah, I am with the BC College of Nursing Professionals, which is the nursing regulatory body in British Columbia. So we are the gateway, I guess, for any nurse who wants to practice in British Columbia. And we are in the midst of virtualizing the high stakes assessment that we offer. It's a mandatory assessment for internationally educated nurses and any nurses who have been out of practice who want to return to practice, including nurses who are retired and healthcare aides who are retired and are being brought into practice currently to support the COVID crisis. So our assessment is offered in the analog space physically in Vancouver, and soon to be offered at a satellite in the Atlantic provinces. But we have been working for a year and a half to virtualize our assessment, which is a simulation lab, nursing simulation based assessment. So we are really interested in working with members of the Supercluster and staff at the Supercluster to explore the possibility of a partnership.
Thank you, Rita. That's great. Great to have you. Next, I'll ask if we could please have Matt Lowe from Zero Key to unmute your line.
Sure. Hi, I'm Matt Lowe, CEO of Zero Key. Zero Key is a hardware IoT startup. We digitize a lot of manual processes, so we focus a lot in industrial sectors, digitizing things that have never been digitized before. Our technology is a really hyper accurate 3D location technology. So we locate things to the millimeter level in 3D space. And we work with a lot of the world's largest automotive OEMs, guys like Volkswagen and BMW and stuff like that. And yeah, we're expanding our digital solutions in pretty much every facet of Industry 4.0. And excited to learn more about the Supercluster.
That's great. Thanks so much, Matt. If I could queue up Vahid from owl.co.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for your time. I'm Vahid. I'm the CEO at OWL. I'm coming from a background in strategy. I was with the Boston Consulting Group for 4 years before OWL. It's 2 years that we've gone into market with OWL, and we are a fraud detection tool that help insurance companies detect potential fraud when someone submits a disability claim. and our whole machine learning engine identifies suspicious activities that are related to the claimants, and we do that in the most compliant manner. And our technology is top-notch from a security and privacy perspective. We are a zero-knowledge platform. We don't steal or store any customer data. There's a massive opportunity, especially considering COVID, with the large volumes of submission that goes to the government, that we can also work with the government. We were part of the Canada Trade Commissioner selection as the top start of the year, where we were part of their New York and Singapore expansion plan. So glad to be part of the program and leverage the network and expertise.
Thank you so much. It's great to have you on as well. I think we'll take 2 to 3 more intros, and I'll ask if Sarah Melville could please unmute your line and introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. So I'm a translational research associate with investigator research investigator team with Impart Investigator Team Canada and Cardiovascular Research New Brunswick and St. John, New Brunswick, Canada. We're interested in non-invasive device clinical calibration and validation, as well as non-invasive device health monitoring with device technology readiness of, say, 7 to 9, which is particularly important with the COVID public health crisis. And I have a couple, one of our leaders on our team, Dr. Bruno Battistini, is also on the call, as well as some of our other research associates, as well as one of our industry collaborators, Bruce Sharp with Routinify. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Sarah. Great to have you on, and it's great to see such a strong representation from cross-industry networks with all of these organizations being so diverse. We'll take 2 more. I would like to ask if Ross Hendon, pardon me, from Alivio Healthcare could please unmute your line and introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Ross Hendon, and I work with Alivio. I'm one of our co-founders. Alivio exists to improve the way that the world manages chronic pain. Chronic pain is the most expensive and least understood area of medicine, period. It's more expensive than cancer, AIDS, and heart and stroke combined. It affected our family very much. My mom had an accident. The wait list to get into the Ottawa Hospital Pain Clinic was 5 years. My background is marketing communications. I'm afraid of needles. I hate blood. I'm not an MBA. And I started the company to figure out how to help her. In the 7 years since we've started, we've helped her and 30,000 other patients from across the country, referred by and in contact with over 7,500 physicians from across the country. We're here to meet everyone that we can possibly connect with that can help them on their journey. We don't take any money from industry for our clinical research, but we're building a digital platform that's going to, especially in the wake of COVID-19, help to really bridge the gap between pain medicine, virtual care, and access to care for the type of work that we do across the country. We've submitted some information to the Supercluster about it, but as this is our first real foray into the digital experience, we're really just keen to learn and connect and understand, if we can help 30,000 plus people in a bricks and mortar platform, how do we build more, and how do we help more people virtually? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ross. That was great. And I think before we move to questions, thanks for everyone for volunteering to introduce yourself. I think we can save a bit of time at the end to continue this on, but I'll ask Gary Wilson to introduce Coastal First Nations as our last introduction before we move to questions. Gary?
Thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure. Gary Wilson, the Director of Operations with Coastal First Nations, based in Vancouver, BC. And we support 10 communities up Central Coast, North Coast, and on Haida Gwaii. We actually have submitted a proposal for the last round for COVID solutions for communities, and we have a partnership with Hakai Energy Solutions, which has developed a container box system that is an energy and a communications system using freighter containers to deploy into remote communities and remote camps, and in the face of emergency response, should there be any issues with respect to power and lack of access to internet, sufficient internet to support the needs, especially with respect to emergency operating centers in the remote communities, where communities are expected to respond to their own needs in terms of given a lot of the focus of responses in the urban centers. So our objective is to partner with Hakai Energy Solutions to bring these container box systems into communities for redundancy purposes, just in case. And if the communities have set up their own triage centers, and a lot of them are away from community, away from power source, away from the Internet of Things, and so these systems will be put in place to support that. So thank you.
Thanks, Gary. That's great. I'll pass it over back to Bill, and we can start taking a few questions. So
Thanks very much, Kaylee.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kaylee. I think I've got the questions here on the screen, so I can kind of go through. And I think just a testament to the diversity of the participants. Thank you, everyone, for their introduction of their organizations so far, and I'm hoping that we'll have lots of time in the balance of the meeting for more of you to kind of do the same. So we have a question, I think, from Randall on what is the preferred relationship with international companies who wish to collaborate with Canadian digital organizations. So the membership model for us and all associates, it is an open framework. What we are looking for is our preference is that many of the international companies that are part of our supercluster have a Canadian operation of some form, and that actually is part of what we're looking for, is that the research and development of the projects is being done in Canada, and that's how we can apply public dollars towards the outcomes and provide the funding to the organizations that are part of these collaborations. We certainly have opportunities for organizations that are not based in Canada to participate, but as you can imagine, it's harder to construct those sort of meaningful engagements if there aren't people locally located in Canada. So the other question I see down here is from Mahar regarding digital twins in manufacturing, how to choose between the digital supercluster and the manufacturing supercluster in Ontario. So that's a great question. I think there's applicability in many of the program areas that we're focused on in the digital supercluster that can be applied in many of the other superclusters as well. The big difference between ourselves and the manufacturing supercluster is that they are more focused on the realities of manufacturing infrastructure, process technologies, and more in that stream. Ours is more the digital instantiation of manufacturing, and digital twins is a core area of our focus. Having said that, we encourage associates and members to join as many superclusters as they feel is appropriate for them. The nature of those engagements is going to differ for each supercluster. You'll have to take a look at what the membership model looks like in each one and how it operates and how the collaborations work. And we do see a number of our members actually participating in more than one supercluster. I think it's also a function of where you're going to find the kind of collaboration that you're really seeking. And I think the supercluster members and associates that are part of ours are looking for something that's exclusively in the digital domain, and ones that join the advanced manufacturing one are looking at more process and control systems and manufacturing components. Any other questions, Kaylee, on this list before we go back to introductions?
Yes. From Bruno Battistini, as per COVID, I may have missed, what is your total amount envelope, and how many grants have you attributed this far?
Okay, that's a great question. So we started our COVID program about 3.5 weeks ago. We allocated $60 million in investment dollars towards it. We're still very early in that process, although I will say we've received a lot of applications and project ideas. It sounds like from many of you, we are going through the roughly 350 of them that we've received and trying to get through it as quickly as we can. We've assigned individuals. We have a dedicated team working through them. I would say that we're still very early in that 60 million. We expect that this will run likely for 3 or 4 months until such a time as we've run out of investment room in it. And so please continue to work on project submissions if you haven't already put one in yet.
Great, thanks, Bill. And another question in from Srini, the CEO of Agvesto, an aging insurance company platform based in London. He currently working with a few Canadian companies on hyperspectral satellites, Earth observation, and IoT. We are one of the overseas associates recently joined the group, very interested to learn about how we can collaborate together. Srini, I might just give you the floor, and if you have a question for Bill, it's all yours.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Kelly. So yeah, from our point of view, naturally, we got invited by the Supercluster through one of the contact of ours, went through the selection process. Fundamentally, we're targeting First Nations community within Canada to help them to actually come and get capacity building from an agricultural point of view, and also providing financial products in credit and insurance. That's been the business model for us in other countries. Naturally, the question right now is, obviously, I do appreciate that there needs to be local operations for companies. So is it strictly necessary for us to create an operation in Canada to access to any of these projects? That's question number one. If that's not the case, what's the best way to collaborate with the entities here? As there are a number of exciting companies, we can potentially do some projects together.
Thanks for the questions, Srini. I think what might be helpful is if I take your question offline, I can actually give a much more fulsome answer to it. In the end, the dollars that we're investing in the projects have to go towards either the Canadian subsidiary of an international company or a Canadian company itself. And so there are many ways that international projects, provided that it's not seeking to be a.
Just if you could repeat the last portion of that question.
Then it must be through a Canadian organization.
Sorry, Bill, you cut out just for the last 2 sentences of your answer. Could you please repeat yourself?
Yep, that's fine. So in order to receive dollars from the Supercluster, it can only go towards Canadian organizations or the incorporated Canadian arm of an international corporation.
Thank you. Next question is from Paul Baker at PureLock. They specialize in authenticating people using behavioral biometrics to ensure that the person behind the connection is really the person you think they are. Paul, I'll give you the floor to just add to that introduction and ask Bill any question.
Okay, difficulty finding my unmute button. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so we're kind of tangential to a number of things that the Supercluster is doing. And I was wondering is there ways that organizations that are not necessarily directly relevant to the 4 current streams can share capabilities and explore other potential opportunities?
So thanks for that question, Paul. What we find is that the Supercluster provides a vehicle for many organizations to explore a whole range of different problem sets, some of which fit inside our program streams, some of which they decide that they're going to do those collaborations completely outside and work on projects together. And we hope that that's going to be the case for all of you. So for sure, Paul, think of this as an opportunity to connect with lots of other industry players, academic researchers, other partners that might help you with building your business.
Excellent, thanks. That's exactly what we were hoping the Supercluster would be. So that's great to hear.
Thank you. We'll take another question from Miran. Miran has mentioned that they have attended the previous ideation forum, which they felt was a great mechanism for engaging other members and finding areas of collaboration. With the COVID-19 restrictions in mind, will there be an opportunity to have virtual ideation sessions? That's a great question, Miran, and I'll just pass that over to Bill.
So Moran, that's, as we said at the outset, I think we're all getting used to using tools like Zoom and Teams and whatnot. We are experimenting with a few different platforms as to how we can actually do the ideation pieces virtually like this. And we're open to suggestions. I'm sure many of you are doing similar things. The areas which have made our ideation sessions, and thank you, by the way, Moran, for coming to our last one. What has made our ideation sessions, the magic behind it, what it makes it work, is just the ability to kind of have a big room with lots of conversation, and then allowing people to break out into the areas that they're interested in. And it's the second part that we're still trying to figure out some tools that we can actually allow people to break out into the equivalent of smaller groups to explore things. And we're looking at a couple of platforms. We hope that we'll have something up and running in the next few weeks. And we're glad that you're interested in maybe being part of a beta test as to how that's going to work out.
Great, thank you, Bill. If we can move, maybe we'll take a few more questions, and the rest of them we can address offline and move to some more introductions. This question comes from Bruno as well. One of the initial projects was the Meta Optima teledermatology project. Bill, could you please provide us with an update on this?
So on our website, I think anyone who hasn't visited it, we actually have a one-page description of each of the projects that we've selected and funded and contracted. And the dermatology one was one of the early ones, as the question indicates. The Meta Optima folks were part of it. Change Healthcare, Providence Healthcare, and which is St. Paul's Hospital, and Care Team. They're all part of that project. And so that actually has continued to make really good progress. And I think we're about halfway through the project, expecting that we'll have some of the final sort of outcomes later this year. The goal of that project was actually to extend the ability for us to have remote diagnostics using sort of imaging capabilities on your mobile phones or whatnot, to send into a repository that can do sort of AI analysis on whether lesions and whether sort of different sort of skin conditions could be assessed as malignant or not. And that's going to make a huge difference, I think, in terms of how we can provide fast care to those that need it in the cases of melanoma. I realize that was a fairly technical answer to a question that probably someone was just looking to see what. Did I answer the question, or is there a follow-up on that?
Yes, yes, you did. Thanks so much, Bill.
Okay.
I think we'll take one last question from Claire K. From Alta ML. We'll be submitting a project idea for prediction of severe outcomes of COVID-19, and I'm wondering about the range of eligible direct costs on the front end, specimen analysis, and downstream relating to regulatory issues.
So there's a lot to unpack there. I think we have a guide for co-investment that's part of the COVID program. What it doesn't actually stipulate are a lot of the areas around things like capital expenditures and other sort of facility-based stuff. We do have some limitations on those sorts of expenditures in terms of qualifications. I almost have to go through it in some amount of detail with you, but I would say for the most part, I would put your project proposal in. I think a lot of what can be worked through as we select projects and budgets can clarify your questions as we go through it.
Great, thank you, Bill. I think we'll move on to continuing on with our questions. With our introductions. Pardon me. If I could ask Aidan Scott from Speakbox to unmute your line and introduce yourself, please.
Oh, there. Is it working?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Aidan. I'm the co-founder of Speakbox here in Vancouver, BC. We are a platform tailored for the mental health field. What Speakbox does, it allows the collaborative care between clients and their clinicians through shared information. Speakbox supports a patient-centered health model by allowing clinicians to be able to send things like shared session notes and work on collaborative care plans with their clients. And in return, we have self-management tools that allows anybody in the public to use Speakbox to do things like track their mood, goal setting, journaling, and in return be able to share any of that data with their clinicians. So Speakbox is really supporting what we call in healthcare continuity of care, the seamless transfer of data, and we're able to do that in a secure platform. The sort of novel approach that we're embarking on is the fact that all that data is managed under what we call a personal health records. So the public user on our platform actually controls and manages authorization and access and sharing of their data amongst their multidisciplinary healthcare team. Like many have mentioned on this call, we also have an application into the COVID response, Speakbox being platform that could be applied both in the education system right now, where we have high school students in particular decentralized from their physical schools, also something that can be implemented within the general mental health provider, both public and private, to extend greater patient and quality of care during these remote times. So really excited to be finally an associate member, and yeah, hopefully if there's a good fit, we can continue to work even deeper with the Supercluster. Thank you.
Thanks, Aidan. That was a great introduction. We're really excited to have you a part of our community as well. If I could turn it over to Mike from Cloud Constable, if you can unmute your line and give us a quick intro.
Thanks, glad to be here. So Cloud Constable has built an animated AI agent, has a physical animated character as its face, and uses computer vision to more naturally interact with people. So it does things like face detection, face tracking, and facial recognition for authentication. So we're happy to collaborate with anyone on interesting opportunities as we are targeting healthcare and other interesting markets now that having a touchless solution, a touchless AI solution would be much more of interest to a lot of people in a lot of different industries. So happy to collaborate on any opportunities with some of the other Supercluster members.
Thank you very much for that intro. If I could please move along to Fayar Jomandi to introduce yourself as well as Mimic.
Hi, this is Sam Armani. I believe Faye went offline. We're from the same company. I can talk on her behalf, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, no worries. So we're from a company called Mimic Technology. We have a software platform for decentralizing cloud. Our software can be used for any type of mobile application development across industry, whether it's AI, hospital, healthcare, fitness, wellness. So pretty much you can think about it, any application that is today is being developed using fully centralized, using likes of Amazon, AWS, or Microsoft Azure, can use our technology in combination with any of those to offload some of the processing and tasks into the application onto the device. And we are partnered with some of these cloud providers such as Amazon. So we're quite complementary to their technology. And our technology today is being used by few customers, and it's commercially available. And any developer within any organization can go and get access to our technology on developer.mimic.com, or simply go to our main page, mimic.com. And we're very excited to be part of this group.
Oh, thank you so much for that introduction. That's great. We're really excited to have you. as well. If we could then move, we have 3 more introductions to quickly run through. If we could hand the floor over to Yolanda Ho to introduce Seamless MD, please. Okay, maybe we'll see. Maybe we'll move along to Randall next to introduce yourself. Unfortunately, don't know what company you're from, but I'll hand the mic over to you. Okay, and we'll go to our last queued up intro from Bruce Sharp. If we could ask you to introduce yourself, please, from Heard That.
Yes, thanks. I am the CEO of Singular Hearing, and our product is called Heard That. It's a phone app that helps people hear speech better in noisy situations. We're particularly targeting those with hearing loss who have a really difficult time picking out speech from noise or background music, that kind of thing. Hearing aids help with that, but they don't do a terrific job. We use machine learning that runs locally on the phone to listen to the noisy sounds, clean them up, and deliver it to people's ears, perhaps directly through the hearing aids or through headphones or any other means. That's our first application. There's many other applications where being able to communicate in noise is important, and we've developed a lot of expertise around that. Happy to join the Supercluster and get to know people, and always open to interesting partnership opportunities.
It's great. Welcome, Bruce. Thanks so much for that introduction. I think one last intro from Evan Jones, and then we'll spend the last bit of the meeting just going through a few more questions. Evan, over to you from Stitch Media, please.
Certainly. Thank you, Kaylee. Stitch Media, we're based out of Ontario. It's a pleasure to meet everybody. We are the digital side in that we're just a digital production company. We are based out of Toronto, and we have done a lot of partnerships with research commercialization so far. We've worked with the Canadian Public Health Agency. We've worked with Project Vega about family violence, and we've worked with the Ontario Nurses Association. And all of those have been about bringing their research and their findings to the public by publishing them online as simulations, games, ways to engage the public on mobile and web. We'd be happy to talk with any of you, and thanks so much for the opportunity.
Thanks, Evan. Okay, let's just go to a few of the questions that have come in over the chat, Bill. I think we'll take one from Steve Sutherland from Crosswing. His question is, here at Crosswing, we're working to launch CleanBot UV based on our Bishop Series security robotics platform. You know, this is quite a detailed question, so maybe I'll just pass it over to Steve if you want to unmute your line and you can click ask Bill the question yourself.
Sure. At Crosswing, we took our Bishop security robotics platform. Some of you may know of Crosswing. We've been around since 2004, and we a few years ago we added UVC panels on it. In fact, do I have just a minute? Because I can show you a picture. A picture's worth 1,000 words in this case. If it's okay, I'll just share the screen. And so the question is, you know, are there any people on this call that might actually be a good pilot site for this robot? So you'll see if I jump forward, the concept is that you have a robot that can go, let's say at an airport, for example, it can go up and down the rows of seats where people have been seated during the day and shine light upwards underneath the arms of chairs, underneath tables. In hospitals, of course, there's tray tables. So it can really cover an area. So the question is, if anybody has pilot locations, that would be great to know at this point, because, you know, we're applying for different types of funding for this robot. And the challenge, of course, is, you know, where is it first going to be deployed? The robot, these panels pivot, so the robot can actually, it can disinfect itself. So if it's in a room, maybe it's in a doctor's waiting room, maybe it's a clothing changing room in a clothing shop. when it leaves that room, it can then shine the light, or in the room even before it leaves, it can shine the UVC light all over itself. Even the wheels underneath, you sort of see the inside here, have UV lights. So it won't transfer COVID-19 from room to room. So any pilots, I'd love to hear about possibilities. So let me know. Thanks.
Thanks very much. I think we had a few more questions up earlier in the chat. So I think I'll hand it over to Irafil, who mentioned in your presentation you had something around data commons. Is that a data repository? Who will have access to these repositories and technology resulting out of its analysis? And what will be the source of data to this repository?
So that's a great question. Thanks for that. So in the context of supercluster projects, what we find is that there are industry players. I'll give a couple examples like Tech Resources or Canfor, or large industrial companies like Boeing, who over the years have amassed many, many different data repositories inside their own organizations. So the intent of the Data Commons project is to help organizations like that, but many others, to actually build the connection points across these different data repositories such that you can derive better analytic capabilities. So a couple examples of that is, in the geospatial area, satellite imaging or Earth observation information. We have a project called Earth Data Store. And the intention of that project is to look at different repositories of satellite imaging. Perhaps it is LiDAR information that people are collecting about the land base. Other sources of information that traditionally is not connected. And so data commons projects tend to build glue and analytic capabilities across different repositories. Kaylee, maybe hopefully that answered the question. Maybe we can move to the next one.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much. This is a question from Mehar Asadi. Can we please have a timeline estimate of an application process, both emergency COVID and non-emergency regular project applications? Bill, just to repeat the question, can we please have a timeline estimate of the application project for both COVID-related projects and non-emergency regular applications?
Sure, I'm happy to. So in our traditional program, what we set up was sort of 6-month intervals for project teams like new associates, new members to actually build project ideas, to go through sort of a curation period. And we were making those decisions roughly twice a year. But for COVID, we recognize the importance of the pace at which that needed to move. And we have a continuous process for taking in projects. And from the time that the project ideas come in, to the time that we work with them, to the time that we actually invite them to come and provide full project submissions for us to make decisions, we're talking about making decisions in terms of weeks rather than months. And this is a little bit different for the emergency scenario with COVID-19. And as I said at the very beginning, the intention of the 60 million that we have for that program will probably run, 4 months or so. And then when we get back to the regular track, it'll start to move back into the cadence where we have the room to do more ideation and workshopping and the ability to kind of work on projects roughly every 6 months.
Thanks, Bill. We have about 7 minutes left on the call, so we'll try to get as many of these questions in as we can. Could you please, this question is from Paul Baker. Bill, are there opportunities to share capabilities outside of the current 4 streams, or where a solution may not be directly addressing the specific asks?
Yeah, I think Paul asked that question a little bit earlier, and I think we kind of answered that one.
Great, thank you. If moving along, from Parikh, is it possible to have a conversation with someone at the Supercluster regarding a proposal we would like to submit?
So thanks for that question, Parikh. I think if you have a project concept or idea of any sort, that the submission into the project portal is is really straightforward. Certainly that I think is the preferred path. If you have something that you know, you want to send me a note afterwards and say, hey, I've got this concept or this idea, please feel free to do that. And I'll do my best to try to get around to all the requests that might come in as a result of this or other things. We are trying to kind of deal with the sheer volume of requests that are coming in. So just bear with us as we kind of work through that. But Parikh, you can contact me afterwards.
Great, thanks, Bill. We're running for 5 minutes left. If we can move to Jacob Mushinsky. We're a cloud-based remote vital sign wearable company and wondering how we can collaborate with partners.
So I think as with everybody that's on this call, the opportunity is to introduce yourself, which you've done nicely in sort of your question. So good for you for get a twofer to introduce yourself and ask a question at the same time. You know, part of this is actually discovering who the other participants are. And you can do that through the resource portal. The question was asked earlier about whether we'll do ideation sessions, and we're hoping to do that on a virtual basis soon. You know, all of that is part of getting you up and going so that you can have successful sort of partnerships and collaborations with others. And so normally we'd say come to many networking events and mixers and things like that we're doing. But obviously we're going to have to find a virtual opportunity for you to do so. So I think everybody on this meeting will know who you guys are and what you're up to. And I think we'll make sure that if you check out the member portal, your profile is also updated on that so people can find you.
That's great.
Kaylee, any other questions we've got?
None in the queue. Maybe I'll just open up the floor if anyone has some a last minute question for Bill. And if not, you can connect offline.
Maybe I'll take this opportunity, Kaylee, just to, again, thank everybody for joining the Supercluster. It is a special community and one which is really built up of organizations that believe that the power of what they do only gets amplified and magnified when they come to do it together. We've harnessed sort of a special group of organizations that I know as we continue to add to the mix will only make us better. So we're counting on you guys to build those next collaborations that are really going to make a difference. And we're really looking forward to working with you.
Great,
and
thanks,
maybe
Bill.
with that, Kaylee, do you want to take us to the wrap up, please?
Absolutely. So just to echo Bill, everyone, this was so wonderful to meet you all on the call. I just really appreciate your participation with the intros and questions, as well as Steve's little sales pitch as well that he snuck in, which was awesome. As a reminder, we have recorded the call and we'll be sending out a link to it to share with your team members and to reference as well. In addition to any of the questions that were coming in later on the queue, we will provide you with a informative Q&A as well to answer those. And as Bill mentioned, if you have any questions post this call, please feel free to email our info@digitalsupercluster.ca and we'll be sure to get back to you as soon as we can with an answer. And with that, thank you again for joining, and I wish you all a safe and healthy week ahead and look forward to connecting with you soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.